retired in July, and they had a surprise retirement party for me. And, well, you know, I have some projects that are near and dear to my heart that I have focused on in the past, many years. And I said, one of them is with the Winecoff Hotel Fire, because my mother was in it. And I said, just as a lark, I said, has anybody ever heard of the Winecoff Hotel Fire? And this gentleman sitting in the back raised his hand, and his name is Patrick Dixon. And he's one of my colleagues, and he goes, yes. He said, as a matter of fact, I stayed at the hotel. I stayed at the Ellis. And I said, oh my gosh. So we started talking, and he told me he had a contact here, and that they put on these events from time to time, and would I be interested in coming to speak? And I said, I'd be glad to. I mean, I have done some of these before, for a group of firefighters in Savannah. And I have to tell you a funny story, because this morning I was at the grocery store, and there was a firefighter. He had his jacket on, and it said, I thought that it said DeKalb County Fire Department, DCFD. So I go running up to him and I said, are you going to be at the program tonight? And I said, with the DeKalb County, you're with DeKalb County, right? He goes, no, I'm with Douglas County. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, come anyway. He's not here tonight, but I said, this is Fire Prevention Week, right? And he looks at me and goes, yeah, how did you know that? And I said, oh, I know these things, And I didn't say anything else. But Patrick, thank you for giving me this opportunity as well. And so I'm just going to start talking about my dear departed mother, who was full of spunk and full of life, because she was spared from one of the worst tragedies and hotel fires in United States history. 119 people died, and it is still the worst hotel fire in U.S. history. She was one of the few people on that particular side of the building in the 30 rooms, 430, 430, 530. She was on 730. She was on the 7th floor. And so when she read in the book that she was one of only 2 people that survived on that side of the building, she just fell apart. She just fell apart. In fact, she could only read a little bit of the book at a time, because it was so tragic and so heartfelt for her. So Mom was a survivor, and I want to tell you how I first found out about this. I was 11 years old, and Mom had a stepladder, and she couldn't reach something up in one of the bedroom closets. And I said, well, Mom, I'll help you do it, and let me climb up there. And so I did, and I found what she wanted, but I kept looking at this box that was over on the side. It was a flat box. It was crammed full of newspaper articles and letters. And I said, Mom, what is this right here? And she said, bring it down. I don't know what you're talking about. And then I brought it down, and she goes, oh, that. She said, well, I guess you're old enough now for me to tell you about it. And like I said, I was about 11 years old. So she brought it down, and we sat down, and we started going through a bunch. Is this Bert? Bert? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh, my cousin. Oh my gosh. Hello. Anyway, she started going through the box of memorabilia, a lot of which you will see that I have posted in the back, and started telling me about this incredible story how she hung on to a ledge. She was there with her girlfriend. She was 16 years old. She had just turned 16. She was in high school at Baker High Village School in Columbus, Georgia. And she was part of a group called the Tri-High Y. And this was a group of Christian kids that got together, and they had this group together in a lot of the schools throughout Georgia. And they had planned a special event with all of the Tri-High Y units throughout Georgia to come to Atlanta for the General Assembly and to visit the Georgia State Capitol and go to the General Assembly. Mom was not supposed to go. Somebody else in the group could go. She didn't. She couldn't. And so, anyway, I'm sorry, I just saw somebody else, my niece. So anyway, she had planned not to come, whatever. And this girl backed out. And so Mom said, well, I'll go in her place then. Good, I get to go. And so she came to Atlanta and with three other girls, and they were not supposed to stay at the Winecoff. They had reservations at a different hotel. But when they got to the hotel, they didn't have their reservation correct. They didn't have them registered. They said, not to worry, we'll put you down the street at the Winecoff. So they made their reservations and they went on with their day, and they got to do this specific General Assembly at the Georgia State Capitol that day, and then they went back to the hotel. They were having a great day. It was December, getting ready for Christmas. People all in Atlanta shopping, getting ready for Christmas. She met a new friend that day, and the girl didn't have a roommate. So she was staying in one of the smaller rooms, and she said, I don't have a roommate. Would you stay with me? Talking to my mom, and Mom said, well, yeah, I'll stay with you, or you can come stay with us. And as the day went on, I think they sort of forgot about it, and so the girl ended up staying by herself. She was in the Winecoff, but she was on the 4th floor and was able to get out pretty easily. Mom and her friends, Bess Dansby, Hetty Metcalf, and Hetty Metcalf and Dorothy Moen. And out of that group, my mother and Bess were the only ones that were the survivors. One died in the room, and the other jumped and hit her head, and so it broke her neck. Mom was on the 7th floor, and she was the very first one to wake up. They had just gone to bed, young teenagers. They were up, looking out the window at the Coca-Cola sign. Very exciting. The theater was right there, the Lowe's Theater. And so it was just very exciting being in Atlanta, number one. So they stayed up, and Mom had been asleep about an hour when she started smelling smoke. And immediately got up and went to the window and knocked the wooden frame out and pushed the window open. Another girl with her decided to open the door. So that made all the smoke come into her room. But Mom kept holding her head out the window. And I remember her telling me many times, I just didn't want to burn up. I just didn't want to burn up. I didn't, I could die either way, but I was not going to burn up. Unfortunately, everybody reacts to tragedy in a different way. And you will hear stories about people who just stayed in their room and just stayed in the bed and just hunkered down, and that was it. But she was going to try. And I think that was one of the things, because she was young enough still. She had just turned 16. So she went and busted the window open and then tried to, breathe, and stood on the ledge there for a little while, trying to hold on to the ledge. And her arms got so tired, and she said, I can't hold on anymore. And she said, I've just got to let go. And all she remembers saying was, God, please don't let me die. And then she started, and then she fell. She just let go. I often asked her what that felt like. She said it was just like a feather, just like. But she remembered, of course, she blacked out. Below her room was a shoe store called the Chandler Shoe Store. And it was it 1 or 2 stories? Yeah. Two stories. So she went from the 7th floor, to the 2-story building and landed right there. Landed on her chin, knocked 13 teeth out, broke her jaw, broke her leg, broke her arm, and would have bled to death, but a fireman who was on one of the other floors saw her fall past him. And that fireman's name was Roy Buford. And he went down and rescued her, picked her up. And they got her in an ambulance. And one of the funniest stories I'll never forget, because she didn't have teeth and her jaw was broken, and her name was Dorothy Moen. Well, if you have to say Moen, you've got to put your jaw together, you've got to put your mouth together. So, they were trying to keep her from going into shock. And so in the ambulance, they kept saying, what is your name? She said, Dorothy Owen. I said, Dorothy Owen? No, she said, no. Well, they tried all the way to Grady Hospital to figure out what it was, and I think she finally wrote it down or something. I don't know what she did, but it kept her from going into shock. The one thing she said to the fireman when he picked her up was, am I going to die? And he goes, no, you're not. But he fully expected her to, because she was bleeding so much. And as soon as he said, no, you're going to live, and she said, I love you. And that started a 6-month stay at Grady Hospital for rehabilitation, for surgeries, with various rehabilitation nurses, and you'll see in the back, she was one of the first people that started with the Red Cross for their water therapy program. So, in fact, there's a funny picture back there. It's like she's posing with her swimsuit. And it cracks me up every time I look at it. But she did. She kept going. The one thing, I'll tell you another little funny story, is her brother, she had 2 brothers, older. And at the time during World War II, I think there was some plane or something named the Lena or something. So anyway, they started calling Mom Leapin' Lena. And that was her nickname most of her life. Oh, it's Leapin' Lena. And then they just shortened it to Lena because she left. But it was a good thing, kept her sense of humor. Oh my gosh, I just thought of the story. Mom was a stenographer. She studied here in Atlanta. And then she went to work at Fort Benning in Columbus. Over the years, she worked for all the generals, had high-class, high security clearance during both the Vietnam War and the Korean War. So she was a stenographer. So when she first got to Fort Benning, and if you've ever been there, you'll see that's where the jump school is, so they learn to parachute. And all the guys that worked with her said, oh, when you start working at Fort Benning, you have to do the jump tunnel. And she said, no, I'm not doing that. Because no, you have to. Now they knew nothing about what had happened to her, of course. And so she said, I mustered the courage and I finally got up there and did it. And they came down and they told her, yeah, now you're full-fledged Fort Benning. And she goes, do you know what happened to me when I was younger? So she was always very proud that she did the jump thing, the jump school. So I was glad to know that. Let me see, I've just kind of gotten off of a little bit of what I wanted to say. One of the things I want to tell you about when I introduce Alan to you, over the years, Mom was interviewed many times by the Columbus Ledger-Enquirer when she, like when she finally got home from the hospital, when she finally graduated from high school, and my uncle, Eugene Moen, walked her down the aisle to get her diploma. They helped her at the hospital. They brought in someone to finish her studies with her. So she was able to graduate. And then later on came back to Atlanta to go to stenography school. Okay. And, but she always thought that, well, I'm not sure if I'll go back to Atlanta or not, but of course she ended up doing so, but I don't think she ever really wanted to live here after everything that happened to her. Back to the interviews. She had been interviewed a lot over the years. When she got married, when she had children. Now let me tell you the key point here. Mom broke her pelvis, and they told her she could not have children. She had both my brother and myself, both by C-section. That was the only way they could do it. But she defied the odds with all of that as well. And that's why I speak about this a lot too, because I wouldn't be here if she didn't have the spunk and the courage and the determination to keep on living. And I'm so proud to be her daughter. My niece. Anyway, she was always interviewed at different times, like the 10th anniversary or when she had me. I was the oldest. And in 1993, these two authors, Alan Goodwin and Sam Hayes, decided they were going to write a book about the Winecoff Fire. And they did extensive research, and they interviewed everybody, including my mother. And Mom kept talking to me. I was working at the Olympic Committee at the time. And she said, oh my gosh, I just wish there was a way to meet some of these people, some of these survivors, victims' families, What you must understand about this time in history is that there were no psychologists on site. This was an awful, traumatic experience for those who lived through it and for the victims' families. Nobody was sent to them to talk about it. So it just stayed inside. They felt like it should stay inside. They felt like it was a horrible thing to even talk about it. Like they were, it was degrading to talk about it. They shouldn't talk about it. Keep it in. So when Mom talked to Sam and Alan about the book and everything, both she and one of the other survivors, one of the sisters of one of the survivors, sisters of one of the victims, they both said, gosh, I wish we could do, a reunion of these people. And so I said, well, tell me the names of the authors. She said, well, I don't know how to put this kind of thing together, but you do. And I said, okay. So I got in touch with these two gentlemen, and we formed a committee that I chaired, along with a representative from the Atlanta Fire Department. And I believe we had the first reunion in 1993, December 1993, and it was actually a book signing for Alan and Sam, and we had firefighters that came, we had nurses that were at Grady at the time that came, and it was just a most wonderful, cathartic experience for all of these people. And they were just thrilled to be able to finally talk about it, And from that point on, they wanted to have another one, and they wanted to have another one. And so over the years, we've done many, reunions, especially on the anniversaries, the 60th anniversary, the 70th. This year will be 78, so I don't know whether we'll do that. We might wait to 80 to do that, believe it or not. But I've been through a lot with these gentlemen because they've helped me so much. And when the hotel was refurbished, the one thing I remember is we had this special dedication ceremony, and firefighters were there. This was before they even started rebuilding it. And the firefighters said, do you want to go up to your mother's room? And I said, yes. So they took me up there, and it was a tiny, tiny room. Even though that was the big one at the time, there were two huge beds. It was one of the larger ones. And it was very emotional and very touching for me to be up there. They wouldn't let any other people come up at the time. So it was very, very wonderful for me to do that. And so from time to time, back in 2009, I spoke to a group of firefighters down in Savannah. And some other ones that, whoever asked me to want to do that kind of thing. So, I just do it because I'm in awe of her. And the other thing that I always do, and I've done it with every company that I've ever worked for, is that I'm a fire marshal on the floor that we are, because as you know, this changed codes throughout the world. And so they always ask me, who wants to be a fire marshal on our floor? Me. I'll do it. They have no idea why. And let me tell you, I can get mean about it. I can really get mean about it. When I was working at Coke, they were having a huge executive meeting up on the 12th floor in the USA building. And we were having a fire drill that day. And all the executives were in this room on my floor. And everybody was starting to go, and I said, why are they still in there? And I got up and went in that room, and I said, y'all, you gotta go. I said, no, we're not going. I said, get up and let's go now. I was petrified. I said, let's go right now. They were looking at me like but you have a privilege to be able to do this. And from that point on, they were like, okay. Yeah, you never know who you're dealing with. You never know who you're dealing with. But anyway, so I like to do that kind of stuff. Anyway, I guess I'll close my remarks by saying that I'm still thrilled to be able to talk about it. You know, last night and the day before, I was looking over all this memorabilia. And because I had asked, Sam and Alan got me the list of all of the survivors and victims' families. And so we would send out this letter and said, you know, we're going to have a reunion and we hope you can come and check whether you can be there, hope you can, blah, blah, blah. And I just have to read you one of the notes because I got that. She said she's going to be there. And she wrote her name, Betty Hughley Long, and she was in room 414. And she said, Janet, my 2 classmates backed out of going to the convention at the last minute. My father was concerned about leaving me in the big city all alone. He knew only that I would be assigned to a smaller room. They would let me know that evening. My father then commandeered Dorothy Moen and her group to look after me. Dorothy told them that she would spend the night with me. Later that evening, Dorothy didn't mention her kind offer to spend the night with me, and I feel that she is the kind of person who would have had I asked again. I also feel that she would have been haunted by what happened to her roommates had she not been with me. And so there are lots of these like that touch me so much, and I'm really thankful to have all the letters. And you know, Mom had tons of letters from all over the world. Oh, I just love you, and I heard all about you, and you know, because she was in Grady for so long. So it was very, very special, and I have some of those letters too, which are fantastic. But anyway, I wanted to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about her, because she was a very special person, very, very close to her. And I would like to introduce Alan Goodwin, and this is Sam Hayes, and they both wrote the Winecoff Hotel Fire book, and you'll see it back there, and they will have some copies if you don't have one. But thank you for giving me this opportunity. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much, Janet. Sam and I value our friendship with your mother as we value our friendship with you. We love you, and we love you. This woman has been the greatest. Well, anyway, thank you. I'm here to discuss the Winecoff Fire. It all happened right here in Atlanta. Let me set the time for you.
Al, anybody, he's got some good pictures. If anybody wants to move up, there's a whole row of seats here. If anybody wants to move up, feel free.
Test. Is that easier? Is my voice carrying? Can you hear me on the back up? It was 1946, a dark and mysterious time before cell phones. Here you see the Peachtree Street from the terrace of the Winecoff Hotel in 1945. On the left is the Paramount Theater, and the right, or the further down the street, is the Lowe's Grand Theater, built in 1893. It too burned in 1978. It was before television, but it was after movies, radio, landline telephones, like the one being used by survivor Imadale Ingram, a guest from Rockford, Illinois. 1946 was a long time after the horse and buggy days, though they'd never really completely gone out of style. There were cars, trolleys, buses, taxicabs, and fire trucks. But breathing masks for firefighters were yet to be invented. Bobby socks were in style. Ladies wore beautiful flowing hairstyles, and dresses were the norm. Like these three victims from Bainbridge. And among the men, the first flat-top haircuts were appearing, like the one worn by survivor Dick Collier of Rome. World War II had just ended, and the good feeling of victory and the assurance of a safer future pervaded everything. People were happy. By December 7th, Christmas was coming. The streets were crowded. People were shopping. Floor shows were playing. Betty McDee autographed this photo for victim Jack Sheriff after playing in his restaurant located next door to the hotel. Movies were playing. Restaurants were busy. That's victim Imelda Reeves on the right. Hilda Morrison and victim Dwight Morrison. Atlanta was alive and active that Friday night, 78 years ago. Here, the newlywed Beauchamp couple of Cullman, Alabama, died just hours before the fire. He survived, but she didn't. Amid it all stood the tallest building in town, the Winecoff Hotel at 176 Peachtree Street, a 15-story monolith of concrete, steel, brown brick. It's still there. Walk up Peachtree Street, near the Georgia Pacific Building, near the Ritz-Carlton, and there it stands. It's now a boutique hotel, rigged out with all the latest safety fire technology there is. But in 1946, it had no fire alarms, no sprinklers, and no fire escapes. If you look up at the building today, the windows are as they were then. They're everywhere, on all four sides. Behind those many windows are the same hotel rooms that in 1946 became deadly traps. Built in 1913, the hotel was a fashionable place. Had a nice lobby. It had a bridal suite, a mezzanine, and a terrace restaurant. Had dining rooms. And it was advertised as absolutely fireproof. The building had a fatal design flaw. The central stairway, open to airflow all the way up. The fire started on the third floor about 30:30 a.m. Saturday morning, December 7th, and spread suspiciously fast to the 5th floor. It was first discovered by an elevator operator, Rosina Neal. As she was returning from an upper floor, she smelled smoke and reported it to this fellow, Comer Rowan, the night manager. He ran up the stairs toward the 3rd floor and saw smoke and the reflection of flames. He called the fire department from the front desk at 3:42 a.m. From there, smoke and fire began a slow, terrifying 2-hour march right up the middle of the building. At the same time, it was slowly working its way outwardly toward the rooms and the guests within them. Force smoked nearly every guest back into their rooms and toward their windows. The fire department was prompt to the scene, but when they got there, people were screaming from nearly every window, begging for rescue. The firemen were momentarily dumbfounded. You could see it in their eyes, one fireman told me, talking about his men. They all had that stare. They'd never seen anything like it, yet they knew they had to get those people out. The fire chief ordered hose crews into the building to chase the fire up the stairway. He also ordered ladders raised to the windows from the fire trucks. Firefighters swung their ladders from window to window, assisting people down. One of those rescued was Georgia Tech's Jimmy Cahill. But his night wasn't over. His mother was still trapped on the 6th floor on the building's back side. So Cahill teamed up with C.E. Burton, the building engineer in the building behind the Winecoff. They placed a painter's footlog across the alleyway. The 10-foot alleyway between the buildings. Cahill then rescued his mom. Firefighters also placed ladders across the smoky alleyway. From all sides, dozens of guests were rescued. This all took time. It happened amid all kinds of falling debris, windows, screens, suitcases, shoes, and paintballs leaping from above, forced out of the windows by flames at their backs. A few were saved by fire nets, including this woman and this baby. I'm going to talk about him for a few minutes. He's become good friends of ours. Sadly, his parents, pictured beside him here, were lost. Let me tell you a little side story about this baby and his dad, pictured on the right. This is Grover Williams, pictured in 1939. After a night on the town, 35-year-old Grover and his buddy were looking for a hotel room. They stopped by the 15-story Winecoff Hotel, but were told it was already full for the night, no vacancy. So they walked a short distance to the corner of Houston and Pryor Streets and checked into the Avon Hotel. When silence finally descended on the city, the men were safe in the Avon. Then came the commotion on Peachtree Street, a cacophony of screams and sirens. One man said it sounded like a crowd at a football game. Williams and his buddy went to investigate. The scene of horror they saw shocked Williams into a lifetime of silence on the story. A once in a lifetime, this is what I like about this story, these tests of courage. A once in a lifetime test of courage lay before these two men. His buddy peeled off, done for the night, but Grover stepped up and assisted the Atlanta firefighters with a net on the Peachtree side of the building. And that's when Dr. Cox and his baby came floating down from the 10th floor. They struck the net. Dr. Cox's head struck the net's rim, killing him. But his son, little Bob, landed on the net because at that last moment, Cox tossed his son toward the center of the net. Little Bob was scooped up by Grover Williams, who took him to an ambulance bound for Brady Hospital. Little Bob Cox survived the fire thanks to his father's final and courageous act. Williams worked for the Coca-Cola Company for decades after the fire, but he never spoke about the Winecoff Fire. Whatever else Williams saw and did that night died with him in 1996. He only revealed the story of the net rescue 48 years later, when he met the one person whose right to know outweighed his own need to repress the whole experience. Little Bob Cox. Pictured here on the right, Grover meets Bob Cox at the reunion arranged by Janet Cox. The two men met in 1994 when a historical marker was dedicated at the site of the Winecoff, honoring the victims, 119 victims, and the firefighters who saved the rest. Some of the upper floors fashioned sheet ropes, trying to lower themselves to the ladders. Closer, we see anxious guests trying to escape. And closer still, we see William and Grace Winecoff at the window of room 1012, sheet ropes dangling above and below. Sheet ropes worked for some, but failed tragically for others. Hot gases rose through the central stairway and mushroomed back down, resulting in an explosion of flames, a flashover that consumed the hotel's middle floors. After the first hour, the ladder rescues were over. The ladders couldn't reach beyond the 8th floor. All the firemen could do was shoot water from the street and from nearby buildings and fight their way up the stairs. People were still trapped on the upper floors. People like Reed and Carrie Horn. They were trapped in room 1612. And others in room 1406, like Bob and Pauline Walt. They too were trapped. They said later the room had become an oven. Downstairs rescues and recoveries went on and on. The hotel auditor escaped carrying his wife. Firefighters' effort paid off. Many of the highest floors were saved. Thomas Turk was reunited with his daughter. The Geely family escaped. Here, 4-year-old Esther Geely looks more worldly than her years. Reed and Carrie Horn escaped with Mr. Henry. They were all kept calm by the quick-thinking Maud Whiteman in room 1612, who stuffed towels under its doorway. Boy Scouts helped man a canteen set up across the street. When the fire was out at 6:04 a.m. and the sun rose, the breath of the calamity presented itself. The hotel was in shambles. Ambulances came and went all day, and debris was everywhere. The Red Cross stepped in, first with rescues and later with victim identification. Onlookers began to gather, the sidewalks filled with people horrified at the sight before them. Inside, a grim search began. Up the stairway. Shocking, garish scenes met the firemen. Scorched rooms and hallways. Newspapers counted the death toll in a series of extra editions, even past the actual number of 119. Here, one survivor, Paul Body, reads about the fire he's just escaped. A long parade of injured filled Atlanta's Grady Hospital. There, future governor Marvin Griffin identified his deceased daughter, Patsy. George Birch began 2 days of angst before his wife died on Monday, while dozens of others were treated in Grady. And the Winecoff Fire was a 2-hour event that shocked the world, took 119 lives, and broke hearts all over Georgia. Among the dead was the hotel's builder, William Winecoff, and his wife Grace, once of Sandy Springs. Especially sad was the loss of 30 Youth Assembly delegates and 2 faculty advisors. They're remembered by a plaque in the state capitol. Here are just a few of them. Maxine Willis, Bainbridge. Patsy Uphold, Thomaston. Keith of Rome, Batesville. And Dot Tyner, who was in the room with Dorothy Moen. One faculty advisor who survived, Carlos Hamill, blamed himself for the rest of his life. There was nothing he could have done. No one who was there was ever the same. Of the fire survivors, some were hopelessly broken, like this firefighter being carried here. He lost his mind after the fire, while others were made stronger by the traumatic experience. This is what Janet was explaining about her mother. She grows from it. Some were broken, some grew stronger. Like Rick Roberts, with the circle around his head here, rose to become battalion chief of the Atlanta Fire Department. He'd rescued this whole family while down a ladder for room 508. And the little baby you see there is the woman you see here. He was reunited in 2006 with Connie Broom, the infant he saved from room 508, thanks to Janet Cox. Rick Roberts committed to fireman all his life. Dorothy Moen, Janet's mom, so badly injured, she courageously persevered through years of recovery. Ed Kiker Williams miraculously survived a 4-story fall to a ladder stretched across the alleyway. He lost his mother, his sister, his aunt, and her 2 children. Behind them is the big blue Buick they all drove up in. But Ed Williams became a stronger man. The Horns, who lived happy lives both before and after the Winecoff Fire. Betty Hughley, who wrote the letter to Dorothy Moen. She escaped down a ladder. You see only her feet here. She married in 1953 and has lived a long and productive life. Last we heard, she was in Delaware and knows what's important. Our book is The Winecoff Fire, the untold story of America's deadliest hotel fire. Its companion website is winecoff.org. My co-author, Sam Hayes, and I have studied this fire, fits and starts, for 40 years, and it never stops giving up its secrets. We've learned that every eyewitness was affected for the rest of their lives. I'd like Sam to come up and handle the questions that you might have. And thank you for listening to me.
Alan's done a great job. Great with all your visual expertise. He's done a great job of collecting pictures and managing our website. We found so much more about different survivors and victims through the families through the website. It's real interesting. The pictures that we've been able to find. I've never really needed a microphone, but So yeah, I guess so. All right. So, anybody got any questions? Yes, sir.
What fueled the fire and what started it?
Well, we in the book, we said it was deliberately set, and the investigators that came in Hartsville, invited everybody to come in and try to learn from it. And fire code changed throughout America and in the world because of this fire. There was such outrage that it been billed as fireproof, and there had been other fires earlier this year, that year, other hotel fires. So, there was a poker game going on the third floor in room 330, 4 floors below where Dorothy Cox was, Dorothy Moen was. And what we say in the book is that there was a man there that got mad at somebody that was in the game and set a fire. And he laid a trail with an accelerant from that spot on the third floor up to the 5th floor. And it could have been the bellboy that he was going after who had served time. Also, this guy was a long time. He'd been in trouble all his life and had died in Reedsville. He was picked up that morning by the police for robbing the Pig and Whistle Barbecue restaurant on Ponce de Leon the previous Monday. And the city kept the investigators that came in to look at the cause of the fire. Out of, I think there were 7 different ones, 5 of them said it was arson. And they brought in some of the best in the country from insurance companies. And the city came up with an explanation that there was a mattress stored in the fold-up bed, stored in the hallway on the 3rd floor, which was right by the room where the poker players were. And they said that, somebody carelessly threw a cigarette or a match into that. And that started the fire. But that, they said that would take, they tried to reproduce this in a lab in the University of Chicago, and they found that that would have had to simmer for something like 2 or 3 hours before it would burst.
43 minutes. It would have to have smoldered.
You would have it smolder for how long?
It would have smoldered for 43 minutes.
For 43 minutes, but this fire was, it was just the magnitude of it, the intensity of it there initially at the start. The city knew this gambling gang moved around from one hotel. It was a group of gamblers who went from one hotel. They'd stay at one hotel for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they moved. And so. Oh, they all got out, but they were able to they weren't up above anything. They were, and these 30 rooms were adjacent to this shoe store. The buildings butted each other, so they were able to step out essentially onto the roof of the other building. And then when there were some students on the 4th floor right above them, and they were able to jump down. There were some students, 4 boys from Rome, Georgia. And, when the gamblers got over where a ladder, a metal ladder, fire escape type ladder, down the back of that shoe store building, the gamblers pushed the boys out of the way so they could go first. All right, other questions? Ma'am? Okay. Yes, sir.
I was going to say, I'm from Columbus, Georgia, and I recently helped donate a collection to the archive in Columbus. And one of the ladies that was the counselor, she was like a chaperone in Winecoff, and her stuff was a memoir she wrote.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was just she was a fake high school teacher. I need to get you her name because the name she died under was not the name she had at the time. She was her first husband.
So were there boys from Baker High School that went up there too, or
She was just a lady teacher.
And she went to the convention.
She was the chaperone of the group.
Okay.
I can't think of her name right now. I don't remember.
Was this a collection you had?
No, her accident on children.
Okay.
So her power of attorney tracked me down, I was just a cousin.
Okay.
And so we gave her a Baker High School annual, and the annual that came out the year after the thing was all dedicated to the Winecoff victims. And then this teacher had put it inside there, and I don't know if there's ever any of these redeemed,
No.
I was never around her, or never talked to her. She got a PhD at all, she was one of the first women to get a PhD at all.
Oh, wait a minute, was her name Dansby?
No.
Okay. She was the other woman, the other girl that survived with Dorothy. She did go to Auburn, but I don't remember her
This lady
PhD.
was older, she was older, but
Okay.
I also do this. And this is back in Spring Market in Columbus.
Yeah, is she still
No,
there?
she passed away.
Yeah, I know she passed away, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mom did an interview with her at
And when they wrote that stuff in the Spring Market newsletter, she finally talked about it.
well, that's incredible, because Mom, she didn't want to talk about it very much at all.
That's a very proud lady, but when she came up to one of the anniversaries,
She did.
she
Yeah.
talked about it, and,
Well, we need to get your name and that information. Yeah, okay. All right, that's, oh, I'm sorry, yes, ma'am.
Oh, I was just wondering, how long was it before the hotel was rebuilt? I guess it was rebuilt, right?
It was rebuilt, well, it was reoccupied, became a hotel again, it took about 3 years. And reopened as Peachtree on Peachtree, and then this new building, because, the height went up in the late 60s, and they couldn't get much business, they gave the building to the Baptist, the Georgia Baptist Association, which used it as a senior, for seniors, and it was that way, so for about 15 years till 1982, and from 1982 until the Ellis opened in about 2007, after 25 years, it sat vacant and looked terrible. Right there in the, when the Olympics was here, it looked like a ghost house. Yes, sir. She said, "Oh, we got time for one more." She limited me on questions here. So, which is fine, which is fine. I know y'all have time. But if you have more questions, ask Alan or I, and we'd be glad to answer them. And if you're interested in a book, we'll have books and be glad to sign them if you're interested. Some of you may already have.
Thank you.
I want